In this video, I'm going to share with you how you can add value before purchase. Now, this is a strategy that you can use to minimize the amount of money you put into a property, which means you maximize the return on investment. It's a very powerful way of using lease options. So my name's Simon Zutshi. I'm the author of Property Magic, the Amazon #1 property bestseller. I've been investing in property since 1995, and I'm the founder of the Property Investors Network, which is the largest organization for property investors in the UK. And I want to share with you some information about these very powerful tools called lease options. It's a very misunderstood strategy, and actually they can be used in many, many different ways. So I'm going to give you a few different ways that you could use this to be very profitable. So the concept is this: a lot of property investors will take a property, they'll add value to it so they can then refinance it and take their money out. A classic strategy is called BRRR, where you buy, you refurbish, you refinance, you then rent the property out. And it means you get your money back to go and do another one, otherwise called momentum investing. Now, it's a great strategy. The biggest problem is you've got to buy the property, put a big deposit in, typically 25%, you've got all your buying costs, then you've got your refurb money as well before you can refinance. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a twist on the BRRR strategy. So instead of buying the property and adding value, what about if you can add value before you purchase? So let me give you an example. So one of my mastermind students, Michelle, she found a property in Hemel Hempstead. It was a former council property, a 3-story building. The owner was really fed up with the property. The owner had a mortgage of about £180,000 on the property. And in the current condition, it really was fairly run down. The value was probably about £190,000. So there wasn't much equity in the property. The lady didn't want to deal with tenants anymore. She just didn't want it. So Michelle, my student, she said, well, tell you what, how about if I agree to buy the property from you at £190,000, but I can't buy it now, I'd like to buy it in a year's time. And in the meantime, what I'll do, I'll take the property on, I will look after it, I will pay the mortgage for you, and in fact, I'm going to improve your property. And the lady, the owner, wanted the equity in the property, so Michelle gave her £10,000 as an option fee. Now, it was Michelle's money, it could have been someone else's money. I'll explain that in a moment. Now, the property needed some work doing to it, and Michelle spent about £30,000 on the property, improving it to make it into a 5-bed HMO. Now remember, Michelle has the option to buy the property at £190,000. Once she'd spent the money on the property and added value before she purchased, the value of the property was £295,000, according to the RICS valuation. So RICS is the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. They're the people who come and value property when you get a mortgage on it. So what this means was Michelle put in £10,000 to control the property on a purchase option. She spent £30,000 refurbing it, turning it into a 5-bed HMO. Once it was a 5-bed HMO, it was worth £295,000. Michelle was then able to come to Crowd Property, which is one of my businesses. It's a development lender. And based on the value of £295,000, they actually gave her £215,000 to buy the property. So what that means is she had the balance of £180,000 to pay to the owner, to pay off the owner's mortgage, and then she got back most of her development costs. She left a little bit of money in the property, but only a very small amount. She got a great rental income from the property, and in less than a year, she got all of her money back out of the property. So this was a much smarter way of doing this, using an option to control the property. Instead of having to put best part of £50,000 deposit in, then spend the money doing the work, she put a lot less in, she added value before she purchased and financed on the end value. So this is the concept I want you to understand. When using a purchase option, you can control the property, add value, and then buy later on. Let me give you a few more examples of how you can actually use this. So people often say, well, how do you find properties where the owner is prepared to do a lease option or a purchase option on the property? And you're looking for someone who really wants to sell their property. They don't want it, but they don't necessarily need to sell now. They don't need the money now. The last case study, there wasn't much equity, but Michelle gave it to the owner up front. We don't always do that. It depends on the circumstance. But another thing we can do is we can look for properties that are advertised as cash buyer only. I'm sure you've seen them advertised with estate agents. Now, most investors would ignore cash only purchases because most investors don't have cash to buy. Most investors get mortgages. Now, what you need to think about is this. If there aren't that many cash buyers in the market, there are less buyers, and so generally, cash-only purchases are at a lower price. Now you might think, well, that's great, okay? So if we're buying cash only, I can get a discount on the true market value, but I still don't have the cash to buy. We don't need the cash because we can use a lease option. So what we do is this. We go and find a property where they're saying it's a cash-only purchase. Now, why would it be cash only? Normally, it's because it's not possible to get a mortgage on the property. So the property is not mortgageable for one of these reasons. Maybe it's not inhabitable. Maybe there's not a kitchen or a bathroom in there, and so you can't really live there, and so you wouldn't get a mortgage on it. Maybe it's got a short lease. Now, if it's a leasehold property, leases are where you buy a property from the freeholder for a period of time. Normally there's 125 or 150 years on a lease. But if there's less than 70 years left, it's very difficult to get a mortgage on that property. And so if it's what we call a short lease, less than 70 years, the only person buying that could be a cash buyer. The other reason you might have a property that's not mortgageable is maybe there's some sort of structural issue, like subsidence, where the property is sinking into the ground. Now this happens to properties, particularly older properties. Many might have had subsidence in the past, but it's now stopped. The point is you can get a good builder to come and they can underpin the building. It might cost several tens of thousands of pounds, but once that happens, you get a certificate, an insurance document, which means that you can get insurance and you can then get a mortgage on the property. So here's the point. Properties are on the market as cash only because there's probably a problem, which means you can't get a mortgage. And most investors would ignore those properties. But with some specialist knowledge about purchase options and purchase lease options, what we can do is we can go and control that property. So we might go and agree to buy that property at the asking price, at the cash price they are looking for. But we say, the only thing is, we can't buy it right now, we need a little bit of time. And we might have an agreement for 6 or 9 months that we've got the right to buy that property at that cash price that's been agreed over that period of time called the option period. Now that option period is very important because it gives us the opportunity to fix that problem. If there's no kitchen, we can get a kitchen put into the property. If there's subsidence, we can get a builder to fix that. Now you might think, why on earth would we want to spend money fixing someone else's house? Maybe they might change their mind and not sell to us. But remember, when we have a lease option on a purchase option on the property, what it means is that they have to sell to us within the time period. If we take longer than expected and it goes beyond the end of the option period, they don't have to sell. But as long as we have enough time to fix the problem, once we fix the problem, the property becomes mortgageable. Once the property is mortgageable, what that then means is that we can buy at the low price, but we can actually do it with a mortgage. We'd put in a deposit, your money or someone else's money, and because the value has gone up, because we've caused the value to go, because suddenly, instead of an unmortgageable property, it's now mortgageable, therefore more people could buy it, therefore there's more demand for it, thus the price goes up. What we're doing is we are forcing the appreciation by making it mortgageable. We buy at the low price with a mortgage. 6 to 9 months later, we refinance it to pay off the first mortgage and get our deposit back. So again, it's another way of buying a property with a very low money invested and actually get our cash back. So we're creating momentum investing. Now, on that same note, let me give you another example of how you can use this. Now, this is not a cash-only property. This might be a normal property, a 3-bed house that's for sale. Now, the interesting thing here is we look for a property in an area that's an Article 4 area. Now, Article 4 is in relation to HMOs. It's where the local council has said, you know, there are too many HMOs here. We don't want any more HMOs. They implement the Article 4 direction, which means they take away the permitted development rights. What that means is if you wanted to turn a normal house, say a 3-bed house, into an HMO for up to 6 people, you'd have to get planning permission to do that in an Article 4 area. If it's not Article 4, you can use what's called permitted development rights to turn a normal house, which is a C3 planning classification, into a C4 planning classification, an HMO, without any need for planning permission, because you're using permitted development rights. Whereas the Article 4 direction is where those permitted development rights have been removed, and so you would need to go to planning permission to get, so you would need to apply to get planning permission. Now, the point is, in an Article 4 area, the council will automatically reject all of those planning applications. However, and this is the important point, if the property meets the planning criteria, although they will automatically reject the application at first, you can appeal. And if it meets the criteria, you might win the appeal, thus get the planning permission, which means you could change that normal house into an HMO. So why is this important? Well, most investors who understand a little bit about Article 4 will say, I'm not going to buy a normal house in an Article 4 area because I know it needs planning and I know I won't get the planning permission. They don't even bother. So right now, there is an incredible opportunity for you looking for houses in Article 4 areas that could be converted into an HMO. Check on the planning portal that meets the criteria. Now, the criteria are often things like, well, is the property within, are there any other properties within a certain radius that are also HMOs? And normally, they don't want more than 10% or sometimes 20% within a certain radius. So you need to check with your local planning department of your local council to understand what their criteria are. But if it meets the criteria, if it falls below what's expected, well, that means you might be able to get planning permission on appeal. So all those other investors who are ignoring all the properties in Article 4 areas, they don't know this. And you could go in, you could negotiate to buy that property, secure it with a purchase option, which means once you've got the planning, as long as you're within the time frame, they have to sell to you. You're buying at this low price. That property with planning permission for an HMO in an Article 4 area, that again will force the appreciation. By the way, you've done no work to the property this time. You've just got that planning permission in place that will cause an increase in value. You can either buy at the discounted rate and refinance 6 months later, or you could come to someone like Crowd Property who will look at the end value of the property. They'll give you a mortgage on that rather than the price you're buying at. So again, minimizing the amount of money you put into the deal. So this can be a very low money down deal. And the final thing I want to share with you is this. So if you're a more advanced investor and you're doing commercial to residential conversions, you might take office blocks or shops, turn them into apartments. You can actually use a purchase option to do that. Let me give you a very quick example. So one of my mastermind students, Nick, he found an office block on the market, on the open market, for £415,000. Now, Nick knew that if he got planning permission to turn this into apartments, he would be able to raise the value of that. So he agreed to buy the property on a purchase option. He had a year option for the full asking price of $415,000. Once he had the control on that property, he applied for planning permission, he got the architect's drawings, and he got granted planning permission to convert this into 8 apartments. Now, with that planning permission, the site was worth £560,000. Would you like to buy something worth $560 for just $415? I think you probably would, and that's what Nick was able to do. So he came again to Crowd Property, which is one of my businesses, and Crowd Property recognized the value was $560 based on the full planning permission for the 8 flats. They knew he was buying for $415, and they lent him 93% of the purchase price. So we only had to put a very small amount of money into the deal. Now, Crowd Property were happy. They were protecting all of their lenders because there was still plenty of equity in the property. in case Nick defaulted and didn't pay the loan back, they could take the property, sell it, and they'd be able to pay back all their lenders. But obviously, Nick didn't do that. He actually did the work. And by the way, they lent him 100% of the money to do all the development work as well. So Nick was able to do this development that made him hundreds of thousands of pounds of profit using very little of his own money, all because he understood how to control their property using a purchase option, how to add value before purchase. So that's what this video has been all about. I hope it's been useful for you. If you want to learn more about purchase options, I have some extended online training. There's going to be a link in the description below this video. All you have to do is click on the link, come and register, and get access to this online training where I can share with you a lot more about how do you actually find these purchase options, how do you secure them, how do you negotiate them, and how can you make a lot more money from your property investing without using lots of your own cash. Now that's great if you don't have much money, or if you've had money and you're running out, or if you're going to be running out of money at some point. This works really well for completely new investors as well as really experienced investors as well. So I do hope you've liked this video. If you do, please hit the like button. If you've got any questions or comments, put those in the comments box. And I encourage you to subscribe as well, because we have great free content on this channel. If you subscribe, you'll be notified whenever we bring great information like this or some of our successful case studies out that help build your belief. So please like the video, please hit the bell icon to get notified, subscribe, and make sure you comment below. And also click on the link below, come and register to make sure you get the latest information about how you can use these purchase options and purchase options with your property investing. They're a very powerful yet misunderstood tool. I'd love to make sure you know exactly how to use them so you can be more profitable. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. I do hope you got massive value from watching this YouTube video. I'd encourage you to click on the link below to come and do the online training with me. And I've got another video lined up for you, which I think is also going to be really useful that you should watch once you've registered for the online training with me. So invest with knowledge, invest with skill. I'll see you very soon.